Hello, and welcome to Chapter 3 of Principles of Marketing, BSBA 2204. I hope you're doing well today as you watch this video. This video shouldn't take too long, but we're going to go over a lot of good stuff, and it's not all that difficult to understand. But anyway, Chapter 3 is analyzing the market environment, the marketing environment. So let's take a look and see. Oh, wanted to show you a picture of myself from 1972. Uh, you might ask, what in the hell is a motorcycle doing in your living room? My dad actually bought me this motorcycle while we were remodeling our house, and I didn't want to leave it outside, of course, so we brought it in the house to keep it overnight. But anyway, yeah, that was me in 1972. I was 8 years old. Also in 1972, there was a craze going around with kids, and it was called the pet rock. And everyone that I knew had to have a pet rock, and I had one myself. And all it was a box with holes in it, some fake straw, and a rock. And kids had to have it. We'll be talking about the pet rock later on in the semester when we talk about products. But this was before the age of video games, and this is something that kept kids occupied at least for a while. It was a fad that didn't last long, but while it lasted, it made the creator of the pet rock a very rich person. Here are the learning objectives for Chapter 3. And feel free to pause the video at any time so you can take a look. And there is learning objective 1, which we're going to talk about environmental forces. Every company operates within some type of marketing environment. And this environment has an effect on how the company it has an effect on their revenue and their profit and how they actually can serve their customers. And some of these forces are inside, some of these forces are outside. So let's talk about some of these forces. When we're talking about the forces of this environment that are close to the company, we're talking about the micro environment. So think of a microscope where you really see close up. That's what the microenvironment is for a company. The micro marketing environment for a company. It's the elements that are really close to the company. It's the customers, the company itself, suppliers, marketing intermediaries, and so forth. So let's take a look at each one of these and see how they have an effect on the company and how it operates. So here you see the microenvironment and the effects that it would have on the company and its marketing. So the company itself has to deal with all of the different departments within the firm: finance, research and development, purchasing, operations. Every division, every department has to work together in order for marketing plans and for the marketing management of the company to work. So the company itself is part of that micro environment. Suppliers are part of the micro environment. They provide resources basically to produce goods and services. And we actually have, as marketers, we have to treat our suppliers as partners to our business because they do provide customer value. Market intermediaries help us promote and sell the products to the final customer. Now, this may be a little dated because I'm not sure if Apple uses premium resellers anymore since they have their own stores, but there was a time when Apple Computer only sold their products through resellers. In other words, they didn't have their own Apple stores. You had to go to a local business that sold computers, and if they were a reseller, they were selling Apple computers for Apple. And we'll talk more about intermediaries as we go along. Here are some different intermediaries. You have the resellers. And so let's pretend you were an owner of a factory that makes women's clothing. Your resellers would be all the retailers that actually sell those for you. So you don't actually have a store. You just are the factory that makes the clothes. The resellers might be J.C. Penney's, American Eagle, and so forth. You have your physical distribution firms. These are companies that get the product from one place to another so that they can be sold to the final user. You have marketing services agencies like ad agencies, public relations agencies, and you have financial intermediaries like banks. And all of these marketing intermediaries work to bring value to the customer in the end and help the marketing department and help marketing do its job. Obviously, there's competitors. Now, you don't work with competitors, you work against them, but they do have an effect on what you offer your customer. And knowing the strengths and weaknesses of competitors can help you develop your own marketing strategy on and how you're going to sell and what you're going to sell and at what prices. So competitors have an impact on the day-to-day operations of marketing. There's publics that are involved, financial publics like banks or investors, media publics such as newspapers, magazines, the local news, government, citizen action, local publics, general public, internal publics. There's just all of the people and organizations around the company that are closer to it than not are these publics that exist. And they have some interest and have the potential to have an impact on a company and how it sells its products. What if you were a fur manufacturer and there were citizen action groups that petitioned and protested against the use of real animals in the fur industry? Obviously, that's going to have an impact on your business. Obviously, there's customers. There's consumer markets like you and I buying from stores. There's business markets, business to business. So maybe you sell to another business who sells your product again. Or maybe you sell a product that businesses use, like equipment. There's reseller markets, government markets, which is a huge market, and there's international markets. So there's lots of different types of customers in that microenvironment. Demographics and economic environments and how they affect marketing decisions. So when we take a look at the macro environment, these are more larger in scope, not as close to the company, but they still affect the microenvironment in the company itself. And they're the demographics, the economic, natural, technological, political, and cultural forces. These are elements that the company has very little control over. We can't, as a company, we can't determine or help have any effect on the demographics of the customer base. If they're getting older, they're getting older. We can use the demographics that are available and change our products and offer different products. We can do that. We have no control over the economy. Companies had no control over the recent pandemic, but they had to adjust and operate while it is still affecting us. So here are the macro environment elements, and we'll talk about those. So demographics is basically, when we talk demographics, we're talking about numbers. Population size, age, We're talking about yes or no answers such as male, female, yes, no, religion, occupations, and basically it's just statistics. But demographics help us determine how we market products. Demographic trends. The baby boomer generation was one of the biggest generations, or is the biggest generation of all time, is getting older. And so a lot of companies are fine tuning their market offerings to suit the baby boomer generation. In several years, the baby boomers will be gone, and they will be focusing their attention on other generations that are going to be younger. So there's trends in the population, trends in everything. Um, why is Southern California known as the taco capital of the world? Well, believe it or not, the taco was invented or created in Southern California, but it's close to Mexico and has a large Latino population. Here are just the names of a few generations that you probably are familiar with. You have your baby boomers, which I hate to say it, I am a member of. I was actually born in 1964. If I would have been born 1 year later, I would have been born in Generation X and probably looked at as a little bit younger person. But I am the youngest of the baby boomer generation. And you can see where 1946, you have people who are now uh, getting much older, and they're in their early to mid 70s. So they are requiring different types of products, retirement financial packages, a second home, a retirement home, medical equipment. Um, in 2012, I opened a medical equipment company because I knew that there are a lot of baby boomers out there that needed medical equipment. So it was a large market, large segment of the market that had a lot of demand. Generation X was born between 65 and 76. Millennials born between 77 and 2000. Generation Z born after 2000. I believe you all are probably either in the Generation Z or the next generation, which I believe is Generation Y. But generational marketing is important because we segment markets. If you remember from the last chapter, we talked about how General Motors segments their market and their brands according to generations and the demographics of their customer. There's lots of changing trends in demographics. The American family is now smaller than it used to be, could be multi-race, multi-religion. There's changes in the workforce. When I was growing up, women were not in the workforce as much as they are now, but we now know that, of course, women and men are equally in the workforce. Mom and dad both work. It wasn't until I was an early teenager that my mom had to go to work because my dad lost his job. And then after my dad got another job, they both continued to work. But this demographic environment and the changes in it leads to a lot of different marketing choices and a lot of different marketing strategies. Changes in consumer spending. The economic environment is something that affects companies. When the pandemic hit at first, and we were in lockdown in March of this year, 2020, people quit spending. So consumer spending went sharply decreased. And ever since the 2008 Great Recession, a lot of people have been looking for value. In other words, they want value for their purchases. So companies have to offer the right amount of quality and service at a certain price, at a fair price, because that's what customers are looking for. And they're probably going to be looking for that even more so after the pandemic is over, because now they realize that it's a fragile world that we live in, and we want to spend our money wisely. Income distribution. Where is the money? Who buys your products? What's the average disposable income of the products that you sell, or the customer that buys your products that you sell? The natural environment, obviously, is natural resources, the environment, and these are affected by marketing activities. Can you imagine just an example that probably most of us are aware of is the coal industry and what has happened to the coal industry over the last few years. And the growing shortages of raw materials, the importance of recycling and making sure that we make our products so that we don't hurt the environment. Obviously, there's lots of government intervention with rules and regulations about how we manufacture and making sure that we don't pollute the environment. So, as a company, we may have to alter some of our strategies to make sure that we support the environment and make sure that we are adhering to those rules and regulations. Environmental sustainability just basically means that our strategies and practices are supporting the planet. Nike has tried to promote the sustainability through some of the practices. And they have recycling of shoes and so forth. And so, if you know a person that buys a lot of shoes, these things stick around forever. So I see a nice pair right here. I'd like to see those. But anyway, this is a very good example of environmental sustainability. The technology industry and how's that environment changing? And it's always changing. Some of the examples are smartphone and vaping, new products and opportunities because of the technology that's out there. And also the concern for the safety of those products, such as vaping. Political and social environment. Legislation, politics has a lot to do with how companies develop their strategies, especially in certain industries. If you look at the financial industry or the banking industry, they've had to change a lot of their marketing strategies based on the 2008 recession when a lot of different rules and regulations were passed. Ethics. Companies have to make sure that they are an ethical and moral company and that they are exhibiting social responsibility, making sure that they don't that they're not looked at as a company that doesn't care about the environment or their workers. So this political and social environment has, as part of the macro environment, has an impact on a company and how it works and the strategies that it develops. Cultural environment, basically how society values the perceptions that society has and the behaviors that a company exhibits have an impact. Core beliefs and values of a certain demographic are very strong. Very hard to change core beliefs and values. So it's very important that a company makes sure that their core beliefs and values are parallel and in the same direction as their consumers. And so finally, I believe this is the last slide. How does a company react to their marketing environment? There's lots of uncontrollables. The pandemic is a prime example of something that companies had to react and adapt to. Restaurants have reacted and adapted. I don't know if any of you have noticed, I'm sure you have, But I think that Chick-fil-A has probably increased their business since the pandemic. They're very good. They've been very good at adapting on how they do business with their curbside and their um, delivery service, even, and their drive-through. Proactive is taking aggressive action before things happen. So, predicting what's going to happen in the environment and being proactive about that. And then reactive is basically reacting to the situation. Now, I will say, I don't know if you've read about Starbucks, but Starbucks has a plan of closing a lot of their current locations and opening more drive-through locations. They want to make sure that um, people will be able to get their coffee in a speedy manner, no matter what the conditions are in the environment. And they think that after the pandemic, people are going to be still a little bit hesitant, even after a vaccine comes out for the pandemic, which I believe will be later this year. So, we're close. But even after the vaccine is out and the pandemic is over, people are still going to be cautious. So, in a way, Starbucks is being proactive by planning on the closing of some of their locations and opening drive-through only locations. So that might be considered a little bit proactive and reactive because of the pandemic. Chipotle is doing the same thing. So that's the chapter 3, talking about the micro and macro environments that affect marketing. And I hope you learned something out of that and complete the rest of the chapter, take the quiz, and I will talk to you in the next chapter. Take care.